but I'm gonna say he probably definitely pooped himself.
Hi, TK. How are you today?
Doing great, doing great. Off of a
Yeah,
long night of work and Orange Sun hosting, but here we are, hosting some
here
more
we are.
content for other people to listen to.
Yeah, exactly. And I like it is so good to see you and be face to face after, is it 2 years now or three
Yeah,
years
2 years, probably almost three now. Yeah.
on Twitter Spaces? And thank you again to Jeremy Garcia,
hmm
Satoshi's Journal, for starting off with the Orange Sun Twitter Spaces. And you guys have taken it over and you're doing an amazing job.
I mean, I'm trying. I mean, I don't know if it's more of like a, a slow motion car wreck that we just kind of can't stop looking at, but we do our best to try to keep it educational.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So welcome to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. Before we get started, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, I'm TK, aka Toxicat27 on Twitter. Um, I'm class of 2021 Bitcoiner. I recently was just kind of doing my own thing in Bitcoin Twitter, kind of anon really. I really didn't want to join
Yeah.
Twitter. I actually had joined because of Simply Bitcoin. Simply
Mhm.
Bitcoin, Nico and Phil at the time were like, "You want to come on the show? Come on the show. But if you're gonna come on the show, we gotta have like a handle to tag you so people can follow you." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have Twitter. I've never been a social media kind of guy, of like trying to be in the like Facebook or any of that stuff. Like I was just it was my thing. I just never cared for it, never liked it. And then they're like, just they talked me into it, and I was like, okay, fine. They're like, Bitcoin Twitter's different. It's not like regular normie Twitter. I was like, okay, I'll take you guys' word for it. And then I mean, it's been like a ride ever since. Been kind of I've got my own podcast now, and I'm hosting my own Twitter
Yeah.
Spaces every day, Monday through Friday. So it's like you never know where life's going to take you, right? And it all started off with
Yeah,
just simply going on, stop lurking on Telegram and joining the Bitcoin Twitter space.
yeah, exactly. And so we mentioned the Orton Sun, but can you share the handle and your podcast handle as well and tell us the name of your podcast?
The Twitter Spaces that we host, the Orange Sun on. The Orange Sun was split off from Satoshi's Journal. Jeremy started Satoshi Journal in 2021, and he could no longer host it. And more people were like, there was an interim period where we weren't doing it at all, and people were like, "Why? Well, where's the Orange Sun?" Everyone got kind of used to the Orange Sun always being at night during
Yeah.
the evening time for the U.S., but it's the morning time for you yourself and the African Bitcoiners and European Bitcoiners and even the Australian Bitcoiners. It's kind of like their evening time, so they're like got kind of used to the show. And I was getting DMs asking like, "Where's the Orange Sun at?" And like I asked Jeremy like, "Hey, could we, possibly co-opt the name because we like the name. We think the name is like it's got good staying power. It's got like I don't know, it just has a good
Yeah.
vibe to it." And he was very gracious with that, like letting us have that. Like, yeah, you guys can go ahead and use that. And so I ended up getting together with two other African Bitcoiners, BitShack and Bitcoin Ubuntu, and we run it kind of like co-op between the three of us, just kind of decentralize the ownership. Like none of us consider ourselves like the owner of the Orange Sun. It's like we run the space because we enjoy talking about Bitcoin, but having it more trying to be a educationally focused one during that time slot, because
Yeah.
during that time slot of the early morning hours in European, African time zones and late night hours of the US, there's really not any spaces for that time zone of people. And we were like, well, there's a Cafe Bitcoin for the morning time in the US. Why can't we have, like a African Euro morning show where we kind of go over the news,
Yeah.
talk about what's going on in Twitter spaces, not necessarily Twitter spaces, but like in the Twitter sphere rather, and just the overall macro
Yeah.
global environment of what's going on news wise. So we kind of do that, but that handle is at Orange Sun Spaces, all one word, no spaces. And then my actual podcast is Axioms of Liberty, all one word as well. That one was spawned out of one night actually in a Twitter space. I was actually arguing with people about immigration, but this was kind of like way before the U.S.
Ah,
immigration ordeal kind of took the forefront of like people's minds and became like a really hot, I guess, hot button topic. And
yeah.
me and one other Bitcoiner were the only ones were advocating for freedom of movement for all individuals, regardless of jurisdiction and where you live.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody else was like, no, you have to have border controls, this and that. And I just couldn't understand, because through my journey of learning about liberty and freedom and sovereignty, I had started to learn the conceptual concepts of what it means to ask permission from someone else means basically that you're not free. If you have to ask permission for somebody else to do something, you're not free in that regard. And that pertains to freedom of movement as well. If you have to go through these hoops of I need to
Mm.
do this and I have to have this accreditation and this identification and I have to go to this guy and say, "Hey, here's all my stuff. Am I free to go through?" Like you're not free. You're somewhat of a slave to a certain degree. And I was like, "Well, what could I do to try to understand these topics more better so that I could articulate and argue the points to more individuals who don't understand these more
Yeah.
philosophical freedom topics more
Yeah.
deeply?" And I always found myself like thinking to myself, what, like, I want to read that. Oh, I'll do that later. No big deal. I'll just put it off. I'll get around to reading
Yeah.
that later. Because there's all these books about people that Hoppe, Thomas Sowell, uh, Mises, Rothbard.
Yeah.
People talk about these books all the time, but it's like it's really hard to have time to sit down and actually read this stuff. So I thought to myself, being kind of Guy Swan being my shoehorn into the Bitcoin space, I
Wait,
really
wait,
loved
not
what
too
he
much
did.
because it's part of the question. So not too much. Don't give
Yeah, yeah,
away
not
too
too much.
much.
But so I
Yeah.
thought, well, why don't I do that for freedom and liberty content? Like, I think that should be perfect. Like
Yeah.
somebody who just reads this type of more philosophical freedom content and just puts it in audio
Yeah.
format. And but basically, it was more for motivation for myself, because like if I force
Yeah.
myself to record these things, I'll motivate myself to actually learn the content so that I can actually learn more and be
Yeah.
able to translate that out to the space more. So at Axioms of Liberty is that one, and that's been going. I just actually had my first 1 year anniversary this last May.
Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations. Podcasting is really amazing in terms of learning and connecting with people, just like Twitter Spaces, I find.
It is. I very very heavily leaned on podcasting to learn all the things that I've learned in the past 3.5 years of my
Yeah.
Bitcoin journey. I guess you could call it that.
Okay, so we're going to start soon. I've got the timer set to 10 minutes. So the goal is to get through 21 questions in 10 minutes. Some people
Mhm.
play it. I'm going to go like Flo Montoya from who does Bitcoin art. She just went straight for it. And some people prefer to really explore the questions and to elaborate more. So it's up to you entirely how you want to play it. But either way, I'm just really happy that you're answering 21 questions and you don't think the concept's too like nerdy or geeky
No,
or
actually, I
anything.
think it's a really cool like idea, because it's like, okay, we all love the number 21, and to ask Bitcoiners 21 questions, it makes it to where the content's not like entirely too long, where people kind of get bored. Like, oh, this is a 45-minute episode, short enough to where it keeps that concept where people can just watch it really quick and then kind of be done with it. I think it's cool. I like it.
Thank you, TK. It means a lot coming from you. So, shall we start without further ado?
Let's do it. Let's go. Start that timer.
Let's go. I've got the first question ready. Ah, haha. What three core values would you like to pass on to your kids?
So I definitely thought about this one. Patience, because I myself know that I lack that a lot with, especially with them. Like, you tell them, "Hey, can you do this for me?" Or, "Hey, you need to stop doing that." And it's like, "Hey, you need to stop doing that." And it's like second, third time, you're like, "Oh, I told you already. Why aren't you
Yeah.
listening?" And I have to use my stern voice, and they are really receptive to that. Like as soon as I get to that level, they know, okay, it's time to, Dad's not messing around anymore. So patience, humility, and honesty. Honesty, definitely, I feel like is a
Yeah.
really good one.
Yep. I agree. Next question. How is freedom operationalized? So, how is it put into practice or experienced for you or the average American?
Well, I think being over here in the United States, freedom kind of is, I don't know, I'd like to say second nature, because in
Hmm.
a lot of the rural parts of America, that's where I grew up. I grew up in the middle of literally nowhere. The only person that was like the authoritative figure was the sheriff. Like that was it.
Oh,
So I
wow.
grew up kind of freelance, to just, there was no rules. I could just go do whatever I wanted and nobody was going to be around to tell you, "Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that." Like if anything, it was somebody saw you doing something you were supposed to do, they were going to go tell your mom. because they knew where your mom was and you
Yeah.
would get in trouble.
Yep.
So,
You get
um,
licks. Yeah.
yeah, so freedom I think is like almost second nature for a lot of Americans, and it's operationalized in the sense of it's really hard too because the institutionalization of the school systems, I feel like, really indoctrinates the individual to like, pledge allegiance to the flag and ha rah 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 America. But simultaneously, I didn't feel like I fit in with that. Like I didn't really care for that entire debacle or ideal, and like schooling, I didn't really like that either. But freedom is it's so innate to Americans, and I feel like that's why like China wouldn't invade the US because we have such freedom minded oriented individuals that the slightest, like I feel like the COVID narrative nonsense was really fought hard here in the US more than anywhere else because a lot of people were like, "Hey, what do you guys think you're doing? Like you can't be doing that crap here." And so I don't know, I feel like as much communist or socialistic type tendencies that are in the US I feel like is one of the last bastions of freedom out there, just for the culture that it inhibits. Maybe aside from the government itself, but just the people,
Yeah.
the social aspect of it, I feel like is very freedom oriented.
Yep. Yeah, I have to spend more time in the US to understand it because it's like as a foreigner, it's tough to understand like the freedom that's oh, I'm going into your time. Okay, I'm gonna stop, but but afterward if we like come back to it, I'll share my thoughts. Okay, which areas of your life have been most impacted by Bitcoin?
Oh, definitely my food. Like I'm very much
Ah,
more aware of what it is I'm eating, what it is I'm buying, going, as much carnivore as I possibly can. Like I don't buy cereal for my kids anymore because even they're like starting to get on it with me where they're eating hamburgers at home now and they like never would eat that stuff before. So definitely my food intake has been one of the biggest things. And like just being more cognizant of like I wear barefoot shoes now. I don't wear regular shoes anymore. Like I wear
ah.
barefoot only all the time, 24/7. I try to be more aware of like go outside and stand on the grass barefoot for 10 minutes at least. Get some grounding time in, get some sun, so those are things that definitely I never did before, but because I was in the Twitter sphere and I've seen the threads and I've read them and wearing sunglasses, I used to be a very like I would wear sunglasses every day, all day, polarized lenses. I'd have all the Oakleys and stuff. I don't ever wear sunglasses anymore, ever at all, because I realized, how much the sun goes into your mitochondria through your eyes and how much that affects your circadian rhythm and things like that. And
Hmm.
I've actually noticed that because I stopped wearing them. I used to be like, oh, it hurt my eyes to be outside. But as I've gotten acclimated to not wearing them at all anymore, I think I'm like probably 6 or 8 months now of just not wearing sunglasses at all. It's like no big deal. I go outside and it's like it doesn't bother me at all anymore.
Nice. Nice, nice. Which public figure is a Bitcoiner but doesn't know it yet?
Oh, this is a good one. Public figure that's a Bitcoiner that doesn't know it yet. Sadly, Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff is a fucking Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
He just doesn't know it yet. I think his business ownership of the gold business and him selling gold to his investors inhibits him from being able to, you know, have the intellectual honesty and saying, you know what, I've been wrong all this time. So I'm going to go with Peter Schiff.
Mhm. I would agree with that. How are you orange pilled?
So I wouldn't say that I was served an orange pill by anybody. I think I orange pilled myself, but I was actually going down the journey through like learning on how Bitcoin was on its own. So my brother actually had messaged me and was talking to me, and he was like, "Oh, I got this Dogecoin thing, and I've made like $4,000." And I was like, "Dogecoin? What the hell is that?" I had no idea. And I was like, He's like, "Oh, it's cryptocurrency." I was like, "Oh, I've heard of that. There's that Bitcoin thing. That Bitcoin thing's still around?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Okay, well, I'm gonna look into that." I looked into it and I was like, "What the hell? It's 57 grand?
Yeah.
Why is it $57,000?" So last I remember in 2017 or somewhere around there, somebody told me they were paying like $900 a coin. And I was like, told them they were crazy at that time. I was working 2 jobs. I didn't have time to look into Bitcoin back then. I was
Yeah.
working 80-hour weeks during that time frame. And I remember it was like, well, it was 900 then. It's $57,000 now. What is this thing? So
Hmm.
again, back to the social media thing. I really didn't have any social media. Reddit was really all I had. So I was like, okay, there's got to be something on Reddit. So I get on Reddit, I start looking up cryptocurrency forums, and oh, look, there's one right here. Start looking into it, but it's so inundated with just going looking back, it's like just shit corny posts of moon boys and get on this new coin before it goes to the moon. And one day I just happened to be on there and somebody posted a video of Guy Swan's podcast. And I
Ah,
was like, I listen to music all night anyway. It was like, why don't I just listen to this thing and I can learn about Bitcoin? Cool, I'll just do that. And so, guys, I just jumped into that and was like podcasting all the way. I started just consuming 8 hours a day, every night, 6 nights a week, every podcast I possibly could find.
oh, wow. Yeah. In your opinion, why is Bitcoin and concepts surrounding freedom and liberty, sorry, considered to be right wing?
Hmm. This, I think, has more to do with as humans, we desire that lever for control, whatever it is. And I think a lot of people conflate government with that lever. It's that this is how we keep
Yeah.
the bad people from doing the bad things, is that those guys over there are the ones who stop those bad guys from doing those things. But simultaneously, the bad people end up being the government because that's what attracts them, because they're like, wait, I can be somebody who can tell other people what to do and then I don't have to subject myself to those same rules. So eventually that's what ends up happening. But I think that with that idea of freedom being right wing, that the left considers having this structure. If you structure the world this right way and the right motion and just the right amount of valiance at the right amount of people is going to make the world right. And then those who consider it the opposite of, well, I want to be able to just do what I want to do, the left will
Yeah.
immediately come back with, well, that means you want to go out and kill people? No, of course not. What we have to really understand at the core of it all is when you say freedom, freedom and responsibility are like this. When you
Yeah.
are saying that you want freedom, is that you are willing to take the responsibility that comes along with that freedom. And I think that's something that goes
Yep.
missed in the argumentation with the people on the left.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Next question. What's a good starting point for someone who wants to learn more about freedom and liberty for the first time?
Oh man, there's so many people out there. The Anarchast podcast is definitely one. That guy, his name is Patrick. He's been doing anarchist podcast type stuff for a long time. Larkin Rose is another good one. He's one of the very influential people. Just read his book, The Greatest Superstition. You'll just change your mind on the idea of what authority is and why it is even prevalent in our lives today.
Hmm? Who within the Bitcoin space has influenced you the most?
Well, I gotta say, Guy Swan, hands down. He has just a succinct way of deciphering the more complex topics and distilling them down in such a way or a narrative or a type of framework to help you better understand these complex topics. Because I never knew about libertarian ideals until Guy Swan. And when he would start to talk about these things, I was like, well,
Ah,
intuitively, it just kind of makes sense.
it's the
And
timer,
Dimer, we're already up.
which means that we could chill.
Cool.
No time pressure.
But that's it. But it's basically Guy Swan. He's the one who definitely influenced me the most.
Yeah, before Bitcoin, so I was not aware of libertarianism at all, had no clue. The concepts of freedom and liberty, like I wasn't even conscious of them. Like I didn't think about them at all before Bitcoin. A cypherpunk's manifesto, the difference between privacy and secrecy, again, like something that was just completely just not even on my radar.
Yeah, that was it Eric? No. What the heck is his name? The guy who wrote that manifesto. Damn it, I can't remember his name. But yeah,
Uh,
I definitely enjoy that one.
Eric Hughes, was it?
Yeah, there we go. Eric Hughes. I knew it was Eric, but I was like, it's not Eric
Yeah.
Voorhees. Eric Voorhees is a shitcoiner.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite wallet slash signing device? Ah, cold card. Is that the
The Cold
MP4?
Card Q, man. This
Oh,
thing is
Q.
awesome. It's got a
Yeah.
password manager built into it. Oh, it's offline, disconnected, air gap password manager. Fucking sold.
Uh, I need
It's
to
great.
uh I need to update my cold card but I'm still
Yeah.
kind of cheap.
I'd be honest, like I was thinking the same way, but what I initially did is when they first announced it, I ordered my first cold card from them and then
Mm.
simultaneously pre-ordered the new one as well. So, because I only had one other signing device before that. So this was only my, so now I have three. So now I can do a 2 or 3 multi-sig if I really wanted to.
Wow, that's
Fancy stuff, right?
and then when your kids get bigger, they can join in on the
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm hoping soon because I keep trying to like push them, like, hey, did you want to learn about this stuff yet? They're just like, nah,
yeah.
we're good. But I mean, they know like the basics, like Bitcoin's for everybody. Doesn't care if you're a boy or girl. Like Bitcoin's 21 million. That's it. Nobody gets Bitcoin for free. Like the other day, we were
Hmm.
out in the parking the day before Father's Day. We're outside and I was showing them what silver coin, like the kids, what silver coins look like because they'd never seen silver coins, and I had like the regular coins, and I shook the regular coins and shook the silver coins in between. They
Oh,
could see, they
smart.
could hear the difference, and I was kind of like teaching them about that. And my youngest sat one of her friends down and was like going through like all those little informational bits, trying to teach her about what Bitcoin was. It was cute.
Oh, that is really cute. This next generation is going to be like operating on a better level. Okay, this is the bonus question. When did you learn to play the guitar?
Oh man, this is a funny story. So my dad played guitar, and because of that, my mom was like 100% against it. She was like, I told her when I was at a young age, probably like 10 or 11, it's like, I want to learn how to play guitar. And she's like, absolutely not. Never. You're never going to get a guitar because she didn't want me to be anything like my dad. And around 14 or 15, I went to my cousin's house one day, and in his like closet, he had a guitar and like amp right there. And I was like, hey, what are you doing with that? And he's like, oh, well, my mom got it for me, but I started to learn and I'm not very good at it. And I was like, well, I want to learn. I was like, can I take it home? He's like, yeah, you can. Go ahead. So he let me take it home. And so I, snuck it in my house and hid it in my closet so my mom wouldn't find
A
it. I would only play
guitar.
when she was gone, right? And then I remember one day I was playing because she was at work because my mom was a single mom. So I was, home alone all the time, a lot of the time with my grandfather. My grandfather was the babysitter for a while, for a good chunk of my life. And she came home early and I didn't know. She's like, what is that noise? I heard a guitar up here. And I was like, oh man, how long have you had that? And
Busted.
she goes, you're pretty good. You're pretty good at it already. I go, yeah, I've had it for a
Oh,
while. So I taught myself how to play, and I learned how to read tabs because like I can't. Well, I can't. We shouldn't say I can't. I haven't ever tried to put in effort to learn how to read music. For me, when I
yeah.
look at the song sheets, it just looks like gibberish to me.
Hmm.
But tablature is definitely a lot easier for me to comprehend because it's more structured in a way of like you have 6 strings on the tablature, and then on each string it has a number. So that means that's what fret you put your finger on when you're pressing the
Hmm.
strings. So that to me makes more sense than A B C D E, or C A D F, K, the whole caged thing. So for me that doesn't really make sense to me. But when I do play music, I just kind of like, I'm very, I can listen and I can kind of like, okay, that's that note, and then I can pick up on the melody and kind of play along with whatever song you like. You like, hey, do you know how to play this song? Well, no, I don't, but give me about 3 minutes and I'll figure it out. It's not really
Oh, wow.
that. So when people tell you that a lot of music is made up by the same 4 chords, they're not lying. It really is a lot of the same chord progressions, a tempo of 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, and then there might be a little change up of like a 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4, and it's pretty, but I mean, I love it. I've played music like I said, my whole life. I was a music junkie for like forever. Like I said, before podcasting, all I did was listen to music. All I did was like LimeWire, Kazaa days. All I did was download music all the time on my iPod so I can listen to music and burn CDs for people. I did that forever, and I was always like trying to look out for the newest bands and the newest music, and because I always felt like when you introduce somebody else to a band they never heard of before and they really liked it, they'll always remember that, oh, that guy is the one who introduced me to this band, and they'll remember that forever. And if you have that, you'll never
Yeah.
be forgotten.
This is like a sort of a side sub follow-up question, but is there a similarity between people connecting through music as there is of like people connecting through Bitcoin?
Hmm. I would think so. Yeah, because I know that there's music that people have introduced to me that I remember that person. Like I said, I remember that person forever. Like I know that that's where I got that band from. I heard that from them, and there's a there's definitely a camaraderie when it comes to like
Yeah.
oh, you like that band too? Oh yeah, like yeah, we're best friends, right? You know what I mean? You don't even have to know
Yeah.
anything else about them. If they like the same band that you like, you guys are best friends. Period.
Yeah. Ah, haha, what a great okay, so I didn't plan this. What's your favorite music?
Actually, I actually have quite a couple. I grew up on country because my mom, like I said, I grew
Ah.
up in a rural town, farming town. So I grew up on country music, like 90s country. I don't care for the newer stuff. Like I grew up on like Randy Travis, John Michael Montgomery, Tim McGraw,
Hmm.
that kind of music. Oops, knocked my camera down there. But that kind of 90s country. I love that kind of 90s country. It just reminds me of back home and, you know, I'll forget it. Um, and reminds me of my mom a lot too, because I don't really live near my
Yeah.
mom. She's like about 4 hours away. But so I have a sweet spot for country, and I've always had another sweet spot for like electronic dance music type stuff, like techno, like DJ Tiesto. What's the other one? Trance style music. So, but because I was in a guitar, like a lot, rock music, totally rock
Hmm.
music, but rock, metal, metalcore, grunge, like all of that stuff, like anything with guitars and drums, I'm on it.
Yeah. I I love, like, this is super old, but I love Dolly Parton. I like from because when I grew up, I actually in my building there were a lot of people from Newfoundland down east, and I'd go to their houses, and their parents would play like a lot of like old country music and stuff. And my sister used to totally make fun of me because I'd be like, "Oh my God, this is great!" Like rocking out to my friends' parents like music from way back in the day. Okay, how am I going to ask this question without laughing? Breath. Did he poop his pants? Was he looking for a chair to sit in? Or was it just gas?
Oh, the Joe
Referring
Biden video.
to your current
I've
president.
seen the
Yeah.
video and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. And just the amount of videos that you have been seeing from him. Have you seen that the White House secretary lady is actually coming out and saying that a lot of these videos you see of Mr. Biden are deep fakes. They're AI videos now. They're using that card. They're pulling that out of the hat and saying that these videos aren't actually Joe Biden. I'm like, I don't I don't know. But I'm gonna say he probably definitely pooped himself.
And for the record, I really don't like politics, but this seems so comical that I could not resist. Like it's almost like theater. It's like it's scripted.
Well, I mean, technically, that's all politics is. It's all theater, all of it, every bit of it.
Yeah. Okay, passing on to more serious things. What's a BIP? Or sorry, what is BIP 19? 119.
BIP 119. So BIP 119 is CTV, check template verify. Check template verify was created by Jeremy Rubin. He was the enactor of this BIP. He proposed it, I believe, in 2019 is when it first was proposed. So it's been a BIP for a while. It's been around for a long time. And the best way that I can try to like conceptually framework it to for people to understand is that we have Lightning, right? Lightning
Hmm.
aggregates transactions. So we don't have to broadcast every transaction to the chain. Now, CTV would actually allow us to aggregate signatures, so ownership, right? Because signatures are the ownership of the coins, of the UTXOs. So CTV actually would aggregate ownership signatures from the actual coins to the point where we can have those transactions verifiably provable off chain so that we don't have to actually go on chain if and when there is uh, a dispute, period. And that makes it to where we can lock our coins in more ways than we can today. And CTV would actually implement kind of like a reactive security model. And I think that's a very big one for a lot of people, especially when you get like hacked. If you can actually set up a saying
Touch wood.
like this UTXO here, I'm going to, when I do spend it, it has to come to this address here. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't come to this address or it's not being sent to this address, it's going to have a holding period of X amount of blocks for me to actually have to go through and sign again to verify that yes, I am moving it outside of this transaction. And that could actually give you a point where, hey, my private key got compromised. I can still go into that holding period and actually recover it to send it back to yourself. so that
Hmm.
even though your private key got compromised, you can still get your funds back. And I feel like that's a huge thing for a lot of people because there's tons of people out there who get phished of like, here, enter your seed words here. And like people just, oh, yeah, okay, let me do that. And boof, Bitcoin gone. So
Yeah.
for me, I think CTV is definitely something that we should implement into Bitcoin. I don't know how we're going to go about doing it, but hopefully one day we can get there.
Mm. And just in case someone just sees that one clip about getting fished and entering your seed words, never enter your seed words anywhere. Don't do
Never.
it. Don't.
Nobody, if anybody's asking you for a seed phrase, they're scamming you, period.
Yeah. 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 You just, yeah. Um, okay. So this question is inspired by the fact that I think we have different backgrounds, but yet we have a common bond. So how would you identify a Bitcoiner in the wild? Like, let's say we happen to be at the same bar or something. How would we know that we have that in common?
Hmm. Well, if they weren't actually wearing anything overt that screamed Bitcoin, whether it be the Bitcoin color orange or a Bitcoin logo of some sort, I think it would have to be the way that you were carrying yourself. Because I noticed that when Bitcoiners are out and about with other Bitcoiners, like their phones are put away. They're focused, they're in the moment. They're actually
Hmm.
talking with other individuals and not just kind of like nonchalantly just scrolling away on their phones. Um, so it would have to be something like that, or if they ordered all, oh, only carnivore food for me, only steak, that would be a dead giveaway. Are you happen to be a Bitcoiner? Maybe, just might.
Yeah, totally. Next question. Ossification or does Bitcoin need to change? You've just kind of answered this, but I'll still ask it.
Um, I think there's. I was listening to Stefan Livera talk with Jeremy Rubin and VJ Boypate, and I like their framing of that there can be a slow and steady type approach to this because there's always going to be need to be Bitcoin devs who are working on Bitcoin code regardless. If nobody's working on the
Hmm.
code, it's going to be stale and it's going to die because eventually something's going to break and they need to fix it. So there's always going to be they call it gardening. So there's always going to be like this gardening type. You go through, you clean out the bugs and you clean out the weeds. Like you're always going to need someone doing that. So essentially Bitcoin's always going to change even if we don't change consensus protocol rules or implement new ways of, like I said, adding locking scripts with CTV in some way, shape, or form. So I think the problem is that there are ideas out there that people would like to implement. I think we're having a hard time agreeing how we implement them. And that's a big change because then, how we implement them, there's like no actually like step by step of, okay, step one, we do this, step two, we do this, step three, we do this. It's kind of like we just kind of wing it, I guess, based upon how many people we feel like agrees with that this is a good change. Like Taproot, for example, was speedy trial. And everybody kind of agrees now that speedy trial probably wasn't the greatest way to implement something. So maybe we shouldn't do that again. Okay, well, if speedy trial isn't an answer, what should be the next way? Should we have a flag window of say 6 months, and then in that 6 months, if we get a 95% threshold, then do we implement it 2 years after that or a year? Like, so there's a lot of ambiguity, and so that's where the infighting kind of goes through because then it's like, well, you're trying to
Yeah.
go too fast, and other people are you're trying to go too slow, and then we just,
Yeah.
we're doing this.
Yeah. Which is also, in my opinion, part of Bitcoin's strength. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, you can't rush through any type of decisions or force people to do things that they don't want to do. Um, what's the best way to explain inflation to a 21-year-old?
Inflation to a 21-year-old. So I would have to say, think of your favorite TikTok star and the niche that they fill in video feeds. Now imagine if somebody created 10 million more of that YouTube star and flooded your feed with that same type of content. Wouldn't that actually dilute your favorite TikTok stars content? I think that's probably the best way to probably try to understand it in a realm for them to grasp the concept. Because 21, a lot of them kids at 21 really probably haven't joined the workforce, probably because there's not a lot of jobs for them in this, especially in this economy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, everything's closing down left, right, and center. So I think that would probably be a good way of describing it.
Yep. Okay. How has hosting the Orange Sun Twitter Spaces and connecting with Bitcoiners from all over the world changed your perspective as an American?
Definitely with the African people the most because their day-to-day needs being met through Bitcoin is like one of those things where it's like I feel so grateful. Just like when we meet with somebody and I can, zap them, 10,000 sats. Like to me, 10,000 sats is, a couple dollars. It's nothing. But for them, it's like, oh my, they're so grateful. It's like I've given that amount of sats and dollars to bums on the side of the freeway or at the liquor store, and I don't even get a, oh, thanks. Like they're just kind of like, oh, really? This is all you got to give me? Versus sending that value across the world to somebody else, they're so forever grateful. You can hear, like, I remember we did a live show one time where Glenn went to the grocery store and all the people who were the grocery dashers were sitting outside. He got them all to download Blink and gave us all their Blink
Mm.
addresses, and we were able to send them sats. And you could
Oh,
hear it in their
sweet.
voice. They were so thankful, so
Yeah.
grateful for us to be sending them sats because everybody in the space was zapping them whatever, amount. I mean, it wasn't much, but to them and their currency, it was like the day's pay for them.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like plebs on the African continent stand a better chance of like mass adoption than we do in Europe or perhaps the United States. They understand,
Yeah.
like they just understand it better.
Yeah. Because they also don't have this semi stable dollar that they don't have access to it. For them, it's like, oh, yeah, you're not allowed to have the dollar. No, thanks. You can't, you're not allowed to
Yeah.
participate. So for them to find something that I can participate this and I can send this to, the country three countries over and I don't have to send remittance payments. What? Sign me up.
Yep, yep, exactly. Okay, what do most people get wrong about politics?
That they think going into a box, checking some name to some bill or some person's name actually does anything to where they get to slap this sticker on their chest that I voted and they have some moral superiority over anybody else who doesn't because they feel like I did my part and then that's it. It's like, what did you actually do? You didn't do anything. You're expecting somebody else to do it. You're offloading that responsibility to somebody else to foster the change that you want to see. How about you go and actually do that thing that you want to see changed? You probably would have more of an effect by actually going out and doing it than going to some voting box and some checking some box for some new bill that you want done.
Uh, which country would you most like to visit?
Australia, just because it's so
Australia.
it reminds me of home because I grew, like I said, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, like literally it was desert. I grew up in the middle of the desert, so I'm like a reptilian, used to 120-degree summers all the time. So I don't know what that would be in Celsius for you. Probably like
Uh,
55 degrees Celsius, 60 degrees
yeah.
Celsius. Really hot, right? So um I would think that because I just feel like it's such an island, it's middle of nowhere, and then like the creatures that the animals that live out there, just so wild and so big, and it's like I don't know. I like their culture. I think they're really down to earth people. So I definitely think I would definitely go to Australia. But mind you, I really haven't really given it much thought because for me, flight was never a thing. Like I was deathly afraid of flying for my whole life. And then Bitcoin came along and said, well, if you want to go to a Bitcoin conference, you got to get on a plane and go fly. So I was like, okay,
Yep.
well, I guess I better get over this fear of flying because I have a fear of heights. And but it's just like it just depends. Like I can ride some roller coasters that go really high, but if I feel secure, I feel fine. But if I'm in
Yeah.
other like in the plane, I was fine. I just read my book next to the window, no big deal. But it was just one of those things where it was like I had an irrational fear in the plane of I'm putting my life in somebody else's hands, and if something goes wrong, there's nothing I can really do to fix it or to change it. So Bitcoin changed that for me. Definitely. I get on planes now. So international travel is no longer off the table now. I can think about going to Africa and going to Europe and going to Australia now. So,
I've never been afraid of flying. And for the first time this year when I went to Madeira, it's a small island. When you land, the plane kind of goes around and the landing strip is like, I guess, parallel to the island itself. And there's a lot of wind. So we're like pulling in for landing, didn't work. The plane took off. And I'm like, that's never happened to me before. What is this? And so we came back around, same thing, tried to land, and then the pilot took off again. And I was like, what? Third time, and I think the pilot made an announcement saying like if we don't land, we'll have to go to elsewhere. We'll have to go elsewhere and like refuel. And I was like this has never happened to me before. And I've been to I don't know, 30 plus countries, I don't know how many cities and stuff. And so we tried to land, didn't work. We had to like go somewhere else to refuel. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, I have a child. I don't even care about my life. I care about my daughter having her mom. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if this trip was worth it before we even got there because the landing was so like, I'm like
Sketchy.
jittering. And there's a woman beside me and she looked at me like an older woman and she said, don't worry, I'm from Madeira. This has happened before. It's just a tough landing. And I was like, thanks for the reassurance. But I was like, I don't know, like my child is
Top
worth
priority.
more than anything to me now.
Yeah. How old
The
is she now?
reverse. So, X or Noster?
I think they both have their pros and cons.
Hmm.
Nostr has the pros of being very freedom oriented, and I
Yeah.
feel I myself when I post over there, I feel like I can really freely say the things that I actually want to say. Because
Yep.
on X, I feel like I have to be a little conservative. I can't be so overtly because I feel like on Nostr I own like this is mine versus X like I could log into X tomorrow and rug pull gone. Like, hey, your account's closed down. Sorry. You know what I mean? So there's a definitely a feeling like a flag in the ground that you put on Nostr versus on X. So I'm definitely a
Yep.
Nostr maximalist. I definitely enjoy it. But over the long run, um I'm honestly the main reason why I still even over on X is Twitter rather is because of the Orange Sun. If I wasn't doing the Orange Sun, I probably would just be over on Nostr only.
Yeah. Do you have as many followers on Noster, or is your network as big on Noster as it is on X?
They're actually similar, to be honest. And I've only been
Oh,
on
yeah.
Nostr for like maybe a year, and I've been on
Oh, good
X
stuff.
for 2.5 years, roughly 3 years. Yeah, 2021. Yeah, I joined April 2021. So yeah, no, was it around then, or was it 2022? No, April 2022 is when I joined. Because like I said,
Mm.
I started my journey in 2021, and I lurked on Telegram in the Simply Bitcoin Telegram group for almost a year before I finally got around to like, hey, I want to come on the show.
Yeah. Okay, last question, unfortunately. Oh, okay. What is a BIP?
A BIP is a Bitcoin improvement proposal. So anybody can change Bitcoin code anytime they want. It's open source. You can go to the GitHub repo, copy and paste, and do whatever you want with it. Anybody's allowed to propose changes to Bitcoin. But just because you propose a change with a BIP, um, it doesn't mean it's going to get merged. So a BIP is just I guess you could call it the proper way of coming up saying, hey, I have this idea. I think this would really be good for Bitcoin. Here's what you guys think. And you propose it to the community, and the community can either, commentate, give you negative feedback, give you positive feedback, and then we can go from there. And like I said, Jeremy's BIP 119's been in the works since 2019. So here we are, 2024. It still hasn't been merged, but SegWit was a long road to getting implemented as well. So was Taproot. So I don't expect whatever this next proposed change, whatever it be, whether it be the Great Consensus cleanup, whether it be, OpCat getting implemented, whatever's going to happen, I don't foresee it happening at least maybe until the end of next epoch. Or I should say, rather, the end of this epoch coming up. So 2028, 2027, definitely could see that being a foreseeable good time frame to make that happen.
Yep. Bitcoiners have low time preference and patience, going back to one of the values that you would share with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
All right.
that's the end of 21 questions already. It's gone
Cool.
by really quickly, and I feel like with you we could like go off on so many different tangents and stuff. So it was really nice. So good to see
Well,
you, and like
it's
it's
like one of those
surreal.
things where I have this I don't know, I don't want to say it's a persona because it's not. I don't try to put on something that I'm not. I'm very, this is who I am, If you met me in person, I'm still going to be this person when you meet me. And
Yeah.
I've always had that on my online identity, quote unquote. So people, when, because I have another like app that I use to meet people in like my local space here, and when they meet me, they're like, "Oh, well, TK, you're like, I feel like I know you forever." Like, well, I don't
Yeah.
try to be anything I'm not on the internet. I try to propose myself of this is who I am, and this is what I like, and this is what I how I act. And so when you meet me and you really like, oh, this is just how he is. He is really that loud all the time. That's just that's just TK. So I mean, um, so I have, I guess a relatable, or I guess a more of a person fine. I don't know what's the right worded, what's the right word for it, but um, I people just get along really well with me, and so I like to make that. I don't like people feel people that are uncomfortable. I don't like people to make feel like you have to do this thing or you have to hang out with me or do those things. But I'm just kind of like just chill, just hang out. Like, hey, let's have a good time. If we don't get along, we don't get along. If we do, great. I'm all for it.
Yeah, totally. And I also realize that I'm like shy. I feel shy because we've like exchanged on spaces
Yeah.
before. And like I'm looking at you and I'm like, I guess I'm processing at the same time. So I feel a little shy compared to, I don't know. I don't know. It's like it's really cool. It's surreal.
Yep. It's been nice.
Well,
I definitely miss your voice because you have there's a certain, I don't know, the way your brain works. You have a way of getting other people's minds to function a certain way and ask the right questions to keep the conversation going in such a way that kind of like, I don't know if you've seen Harry Potter before, right? Remember when they're in the room and they have the, well,
I've never seen Harry Potter.
there's a scene in the story where Harry Potter, they have this like hourglass and they flip it over, and depending on how the conversation is going in between the individuals is how slow the time kind of goes through the hourglass. And if
Okay.
it's going through
Yeah.
really good, it goes through, very well at a certain speed. And I feel like you have that ability to foster others' creativity and other people's insights that probably would have gotten glossed over had you weren't there. I've always had that feeling about you when you were, a regular on the Orange Sun, and it definitely it's and you have that woman energy too. It's always nice to have a woman's perspective on things. So definitely miss it on the
Yeah.
Orange Sun.
Thank you.
Very good.
So, TK, thank you again for answering 21 questions. Can you remind
Appreciate it.
people where they can find you on social media?
I have my NPub. I don't know. Do you want me to send you my NPub so that you can put that in the show notes,
Oh,
or
yeah, of course. Yep.
okay? I'll send you that because obviously that's some long string, but I think you can find it at was it Toxicat27 at bitcoiner.social. That's like the thing you can search that and find me on Nostr that way. But and then Twitter is at Toxicat TOXIKAT27 on Twitter.
Thank you very much.